The Hidden Tradition, Esoteric Currents in Frankfurt School Critical Theory. Good evening. I want to begin with a provocation. When we think of the Frankfurt School, Horkheimer, Adorno, Benjamin, Marcuse, we tend to think of rigorous social criticism, Marxist economics, the analysis of ideology, the critique of the culture industry. We think of hard-nosed intellectual work aimed at understanding domination and the prospects for human liberation. We do not, typically, think of alchemy. We do not think of Kabbalah or Gnostic theology or the mystical traditions of the Western esoteric heritage. And yet I want to suggest to you tonight, if you read the Frankfurt School without any awareness of those traditions, you are missing something important. Not something decorative, not something marginal, something structural. Let me be precise about what I mean, because this claim can easily be misunderstood. I'm not suggesting that Adorno was secretly conducting magical rituals, or that Horkheimer was a closet theosophist. What I am suggesting is that certain intellectual structures, certain ways of thinking about reality, about history, about redemption, about the relationship between the visible and the invisible, entered Frankfurt School, thought through channels that are not always acknowledged, and that those structures bear a recognizable family resemblance to the Western esoteric tradition. To see this clearly, we need to understand something about the intellectual genealogy of critical theory. The Frankfurt School thinkers were, above all, heirs to German idealism, and specifically to Hegel. And Hegel himself was working in a tradition that had absorbed, transformed, and in certain ways secularized a much older mystical inheritance. Think about what Hegel is actually doing when he describes the absolute moving through nature and history, externalizing itself, becoming estranged from itself, and finally returning to itself through the medium of conscious spirit. The structure of that movement, emanation, fall into matter, return, is not invented by Hegel. It is ancient. You find it in Neoplatonism, in Plotinus, you find it in the Hermetic corpus, you find it in the speculative mysticism of Jacob Böhme, whose influence on German idealism is direct and well documented, and who conceived of God as a self-sundering ground that comes to know itself through the painful drama of creation and return. The early Hegel was quite explicit about this. His first systematic sketches described the absolute realizing itself through idea, nature, ethics, and religion, a philosophical reenactment of the very life of divine substance. The goal of philosophy, he insisted at this early stage, was not merely theoretical. It was, as he put it, that by philosophy and through philosophy we learn how to live. There is something unmistakably initiatory about that claim. Philosophy is not just description, it is transformation. Now Marx inherits this Hegelian structure and famously inverts it. Where Hegel located the motor of history and spirit, Marx locates it in material life, in the concrete relations of production. The German ideology opens with a magnificent polemic against those, the young Hegelians, who believed that liberation consisted in changing ideas. Marx mocks them brilliantly, comparing them to a man who believed people drowned because they held the idea of gravity, and who therefore spent his life fighting the concept rather than learning to swim. And yet, and here's the crucial point, Marx does not abandon the esoteric structure. He displaces it. The drama of alienation and potential reconciliation, of a humanity that has externalized its own powers and then bows down before its own creations as though they were alien gods. This is still, at its core, a story about a fall and a possible redemption. Marx's critique of ideology, of the phantoms of the brain that dominate human beings, carries within it an unmistakably Gnostic undertone. We are imprisoned by illusions that we ourselves have manufactured, and true knowledge, what Marx calls critical knowledge, is the beginning of liberation. The esoteric tradition had a word for this kind of knowledge. It called it gnosis. When the Frankfurt School inherits this double legacy, the mystical idealist Hegel and the materialist critical Marx, it inherits both the tension between them and the esoteric structure that underlies both. And what is fascinating is that different thinkers in the school handle this inheritance in very different ways.